This tutorial is going to help you with setting up your workspace and how you want to start up your scene. And we're going to talk about a few of the um, standard stuff that you need to learn right off the bat to kind of get around using 3ds Max. Um, So let's get started here. In the beginning, you should have something like this, like a start screen, so you can uncheck that. It won't show up again. If you want to bring that back, you can go up to the help and click welcome screen. Um, I actually already added this box just to give you an example of how this is something how maybe how the default scene would open based on the viewports. Um, where we could change this to maybe two screens instead of four screens, and we can also change settings within the viewports as well. And when you want to open that every time standard, you would save the scene as a max start. So this one is actually a max start default. My max start, I'll show you here in a second, is a little different. So let's just go ahead and open that one up. I hit save. I don't want to do that. Let's hit open. So File, Open, Max Start, and you'll see that it's just two screens because I like working with two screens. As a beginner, I would suggest using four for a while. Um, Now for the main outside of the viewports, for like things like showing tools and buttons and displays and all that, that's going to be all controlled through your workspace. So we want to create a custom workspace. This is the default. You come over here, it's hiding behind my little logo here, which also is covering up my name here. Manage workspace, and this is the default layout. So I'm going to go ahead and hit workspace, my workspace, sorry, and you will see that basically I like having this dragged out. You can do two of them is probably more recommended compared to three, because that'll take away from your space here. I have a really ultra wide screen, but when you're working with let's go ahead and open up the other scene real quick. No, actually, let's just go ahead and make a box. um, I'll just center that real quick. I'm going to convert that to poly. When you're in when you have an editable poly object, um, if you only have this in one screen, then you're going to have to scroll a lot, and that's not going to be fun. So I like to save that layer like that. And then another thing you can do is up here we have a button for opening up the toggle layer explorer. Okay, so let's just go back to the default one. This is the default one here, so let's go ahead and click on that again. As you can see, it just tried to open up a second one. Um, so let's go ahead and close that. At any time, you can change this to Scene Explorer or Layer Explorer or other types of settings here. Most common is going to be you're going to use the defaults. I think with the default also as well, it's gonna this little toggle button is gonna keep going back to the other one. So we're gonna end up using your own custom one, and then you'll end up changing that to my workspace. And this is for your layer system. So as you see here, it says my workspace rather than these down here. So um, and that will be another tutorial for layers, but I highly recommend that you use the layer system for organizing all your objects. Um, so yeah, so once you set up this the way you want it, and maybe even adding some new buttons or different options of buttons, which I'll show you in another tutorial. Then you can come open up this, manage, and save new workspace, and I called it my workspace. Okay, so now that will save everything outside here. Inside here, like I said, you would hit File, Save As, and name it Max Start. And every time you restart 3ds Max, it will save the viewports the way you want. If you come down to Configure Viewports, you can change the layout here, And I also recommend coming over to display performance and changing these over to 4096. And that's about it for just a quick little start here. A quick layout, a quick tutorial. This is your timeline for animations. So a simple animation, you'd click the move tool and you turn on auto key, put this at 100, drag the box over. It will create a new key here. It'll always start. It'll always place a key at 0, and now you have animation there. So that's just a simple little demonstration of that. Up here you have what we call select object. I have that set for my spacebar, and basically whenever you're not rotating, moving, or scaling an object, you want to have it on select. That way you're not just moving objects around. There are other methods for locking objects in the scene, so you can't accidentally move them when you're not working on them as well. But your 4 main things here is going to be select object, move object, rotate object, and scale object. And then at any time you can right click, convert to poly, and over here under the modify, under selections, you're going to have vertex, which is going to be the little single points, and then you can still use these controls here. We'll put this in local. I'm sorry, we'll put, whenever you're in vertex, parent will be the direction, the orientation of the box that we had moved it to. So you can move that one individual vertex. You could do an edge. If you do border, that's going to be, let me delete a face here real quick. A border will be an open face. So if you just highlight the whole thing, it'll show a red all the way around the opening of this box. This is also a great method for checking for an object that's not watertight, and maybe you have a vertice that's not welded. Polygon is how we just deleted that face, so that's, you can select individual faces. And then element would be the entire object. If we had made a clone, if you hold down the shift key and drag, change this to copy, number of copies 1, hit OK. Take this box, attach it to this box. You have 2 individual elements, even though now this is one object. Now, important for your object, if you come up to hierarchy, this is the 3rd tab, and you hit effect pivot, that is the actual local orientation of the current box. You can alter this, even though the right now it was aligned with the shape of the box, because obviously the box and this will be created together at the same time. But you can change this at any time and the location, and it gets a little bit deeper into stuff like that. The first tab is for creating. So you got, most common things would be like a plane, the box, which we just did, a cylinder. You drag, left click, drag, and then move your mouse and then click again. So to create that, let me explain that again. So left click and hold and drag, let go, move up, and then click again, and that's your cylinder. A sphere, left click, slide, let go, and those would be your most common. On this little under the first tab down here, you also have more tools in here, like a line tool, and line tools is another entire type of object where you can eventually draw out outline objects and then convert that into editable poly as well. So that's very helpful. The 4th tab is for motion. That's where we saw that animation. So there's those keys. So you can see position right there, and then no position. Bring the timeline over here, and then position again. Well, let's see. So, and then some of these extra buttons here along the side here, and these, I've added these in my own custom shortcuts. So let's talk about the customized menu here. If you open this up and put it on toolbars, you can create new here, and then you'll see a list here, and Geometry tools, helper tools, side tools, and Babylon tools. So, yep, you can add them and delete them through here. And whenever you create one, it'll look like these little dots right here. It'll create and float in the screen here. So let's just hit New, Test, hit OK, and you can see it's right there. So we'll drag it up to here like this. Um, and then we'll come over here, we'll hit Test, and we'll hit Delete. Now, if you don't want to accidentally start moving things around where you're opening up, for example, another important window is going to be your material editor. You don't want to accidentally start dropping this into Windows, so you can hit Customize and you can hit Lock UI Layout. So now nothing will accidentally get dropped somewhere where you don't want it to when you're moving it around. And then you can change your configure your project path here, and let's see. Actually, this will just show you where your project path is. And then another very important thing is your units setup. So this is going to be for metric or US and different options for your scaling. So when you create a box or a cylinder like this and go over to modify, it's showing it in meters or different scales depending on what you choose. So the actual size of your scene is important, and that would be done through the systems unit setup. And here, don't just leave it as 1.0. Don't mess with any of these other settings. Just change it here. And for example, if you're working like building a city, you would want that in kilometers. If you're building like a large aircraft or a building, do it in meters. And as you get smaller, then you want to start going a little bit smaller. So centimeters, meters. And the point is that you can zoom in a lot further on an object. So like if you're trying to build a watch and you put it on here, you're not going to be able to zoom in very far. So you'd want to have maybe a watch on feet or something close to here. And by the way, miles is the furthest one. I don't. This is not exactly in the order that I was thinking it was. That miles would be like if you're doing like a a very large mountain range area or large city. So. Um, these are important. Most of the time, like in my industry, we just always have it on meters. It works great for like vehicles and aircraft size objects. So you can always pretty much do a lot of work in meters. Another important thing to know about the UI, if you click on an individual viewport, down here in the bottom right hand corner, you can do maximize viewport toggle, and that'll get you to one screen or back to your preset viewport setting screens. And then the last thing I want to show you is if you want to link a part. So if you have animations on this part, but you want to not have to set up animation on a second part, that's where we're going to basically link it, like piggyback it. Click on the little chain link here, select this object here, left click, hold, drag, you'll see a line that's looking for something, and then let go over the parts. So now if we just move the timeline, you can see it's following it, or if we just actually move that move that object. If you want to unlink it, click the part you want to unlink and then click unlink. Also at any time, whenever you have whatever you have in the scene, if you click H, that brings up your select from scene thing here, and you can change it with children, without. So children would be the same thing you're talking about when we link something. So if this is linked here, there'll be a drop down here, and like you see over here, this little arrow, and this would be under this object here, depending if you have display children showing. I think that is a pretty good start for you to understand what you need. So don't forget, you're going to create a MySpace that'll set up everything outside the viewports. In here, you can change the viewport information, and then hit File Save As and save it as Max Start. And then every time you start up 3ds Max, it'll start up with the default viewport the way you want. Once you start working on a project and start changing things from there, and you load that project, then of course it's going to give you your viewports on that each time how you save that state. So yep, I think this will give you a very good start of the UI, and thanks for watching the tutorial, and click like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.